Because earlier we talked about astrotheology. Now we can talk about geometry. Because what is the famous fish shape in geometry? Is the Vesica Pisces.
Yeah. This is a very interesting subject, this one, the sacred geometry, isn't it?
Isn't it? And isn't it true that the Vesica Pisces is absolutely identifiable to the goddess? Well, it's the fish. It's the womb. It's the what you call the vagina. You know, the womb shape. You even see in architecture, Jesus will be sitting in what's called the mandorla. It's like a sort of arch, like a Vesica symbol.
Yeah. I mean, they have this with the church as well, don't they? As you go into the entrance of the church, you're entering the goddess and so forth, you know.
Exactly. Mother Church. Well, that's loose. That is not only the Vesica Pisces. We have ancient gods, Uanes. We've got Dagon, who are fish gods. So even in the mythology of gods, some of the most greatest gods, certainly in Celtic Ireland, you have the thing called the salmon of knowledge. So the fish represented knowledge. You have it very strongly in Irish mythology, the salmon of knowledge, the Vesica Pisces, the wisdom of the fish, Jesus and the two fishes, you know, and then the feeding of the 5,000 and all the rest of it. What's this fish number? This is because these are adepts. These are people. These are masters of the great sciences. These Jesus Christs, these stars, these Lucifers were the keepers of that sacred knowledge that you've just been mentioning and alluding to, that they're holding it from us. They covet it. They're not serving all mankind. They're not saying, mankind, this knowledge is for you. They're saying it's for us because we understand that knowledge is power. Who the hell is this Henry LUS?
Who is this?
Used to be the head of Time magazine. 33rd, yep. Knights of Malta. 33rd degree Freemason. Just happens to be called Henry LUS. May mean nothing.
Yeah.
Gotta observe these things.
Yeah, you get quite a lot of them, you know, people called Sol and all the rest of it, you know.
Yeah, that's right. All over the place. Like this latest wedding that's just taken place. Check out the Kate Middleton and all the symbolism behind that. It's just unbelievable. It's in your face every day. They know about it.
I mean, we spoke a little while ago briefly via email, and you did mention that the astrological positioning of the stars at the time of the royal wedding was quite interesting. Do you remember that at the moment?
Only the fact that it was, in Taurus or whatever.
Right.
It's slipped me by right now. I have to brush up on it. But certainly, absolutely, one thing you can always guarantee is that whenever they do something like this, there is a very great importance to it. I think what we were speaking about was the fact that the sign of a 13th sign of the zodiac was prominent in the sky when it happened.
Ah, yeah, that could have been it. Yeah. Also, with regards to something I picked up on when it was on the television, I wanted to see the symbolism for myself firsthand while they were putting this across the screens, and to see that many people out there is a little bit disheartening, you know, kind of celebrating this wedding all there at the palace and what have you. But it was interesting. I was actually on the computer, and at the time that the Queen came out onto the balcony, I mean, I think it was either 13:11 or 11:13, depending on what time the wedding was. And there was another significant time that she went back in. And I'm sure this is not kind of by mistake, is it? There's definitely a Kabbalistic element to everything these people do, you know.
Sure it is. The clock is made of 12 hours, just like the zodiac is made of 12 signs in the months of 12 years. So they use that mini zodiac, in other words, the clock, exactly based on numerology. Why sometimes you're not able to work it out is because it's based on their personal date of birth. So somebody might be saying, I don't see any symbolism in it, but that's because they're told to do things based on their date chart. It's very similar to the system I have for my clients on time gnosis. We have a daily chart there, and it's based on each individual person's birth date.
Right.
So it's not just an objective thing, you see, in which there's a lot of objective ritual to this, but there's also the subjective aspect where these people's own dates of birth, their personal private chart, is being activated. And people should not doubt this for one instant, because I've got the proof. I know that it's a lot of people talking, hearing you speak about this for the first time, go, what the hell is this? Well, if it's what the hell is this, go and watch my, video on my YouTube site, Unslaved Films. There's a thing I did there called the Declaration of Deception. It's very short. People can watch it. During that YouTube presentation, you can freeze the video at the chart of the birth of the United States of America.
Okay, interesting.
I just show it, just passing. You can see that the chart, this is a totally official astrological chart of the absolute day of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and freeze that and look at it. And you will see a perfect Star of David I would say these are the Judites, these are the Davids, these are the people who are the top Illuminati.
Yeah.
And the Star of David is the old Star of Solomon. It's one of the most sacred of all their stars. It's also a Masonic star. What are the chances, if anybody is listening to this who happens to be into probability and statistics and so on, I'm certainly not, what are the chances that the greatest country in the world, the United States of America, happens to be founded on the exact moment, and by the way, these charts are done like really literally to the moment, that the arrangement of planets and stars in the heavens makes a perfect Star of David.
Mm.
Is that accident? You damn well bet it isn't. And if you go into all the other arrangements, the layings of different stones and all these other timings and things that were involved in the founding of America and the founding of the famous cities there, it will leave even the most skeptical person in no doubt at all of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But what they have to say, what one has to understand then, is that it's not just astronomy and astrology and street geometry that these people employ. They employ numerology. They employ the stellar zodiac.
Mm.
They employ color. They employ light, as we've been talking about. And that's why they call themselves the Princes of Light. Mm. That's why every Masonic diadem you look at has light radiating from behind it.
Yeah.
Or in it. That's why our culture is just permeated with the symbol of the sun and this use of light, you see, all over our culture today.
Yeah, I mean, when we had our previous interview some time back, we were speaking about Akhenaten and the cult of light. I remember you did mention there's certain occult properties to light.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Could you tell us what maybe some of these properties are? Because it's been racking my brain.
I'd love to get into that. That's basically the whole nub of this whole thing.
Right.
Here's a line from Akhenaten's hymn to Aton.
Okay.
And let me just add again for the Christian listener, the hymn to Aton has now been absolutely universally accepted as the prototype to the Song of Solomon.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, in the Bible, almost verbatim, by the way.
Really?
So if you don't want to have a heart attack, don't go and look up what I'm saying, because if you do, prepare to have a stiff drink beside you, because they have line by line the Song of Solomon, the Psalms, and what have you, absolutely stripped down. These biblical scholars of the highest credibility. I'm talking about seminarians, not some wacko jacko, Majkl Tsarion and Jordan Maxwell. No, nobody from outside the wall. Absolute academics have now understood that the Songs of Solomon, the great Solomon, are based on Egyptian lore. Right out of Akhenaten's hymn to Aton. Here's one of the first lines. At daybreak, when thou arisest on the horizon, when thou shinest as the Aton by day, thou drivest away the darkness and givest thy rays. Those were the opening lines.
Mm.
The rays. Giving,
okay.
And in fact, Ray comes from Ra, the god Ra. Right? We say Amen at the end of Christian prayers to say light on everything. This Egyptology is full of it. But getting back to your question about the actual psychic dictatorship, this is of absolutely monumental importance. And it factors into understanding why these people worship this god. There's millions of gods. Volcano gods, fish gods. I don't know what kind of gods you've got. Thunder gods. Everybody's got a god, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why worship Aton? Why worship Adon? Why worship this Yahweh, this Yahweh, this Jehovah? Well, what is this? It's because he's a god of war. As I said, the planet Mars. Mars is always associated in astrology with wars, and he's also one of the gods identified corresponding to the tempter, the Lucifer, right?
Okay.
Here's a quote from Exodus 15:3. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name, right? So the Lord's a man of war. There it is. He wields a sword. He's got a big stick. I've got umpteen quotes from Martin Luther saying, and John Calvin going, God made the sword to kill you all. God made the war. God made justice, and that's the end of it. I've got a quote here that says, it is very plainly in our arcane literature. Right? It is very plainly put in our arcane literature that Jehovah was originally a lord of Mars. He is also the god of battles. Mars and its lord are somehow deeply associated with strife and violence, affecting and afflicting that type of humanity inhabiting the earth. Mm-hmm. So Mars and Jehovah are one. That means Mars and Lucifer are one.
Okay.
So this is very frightening to me. I don't think this is like a joke or anything. This fiery god of volcanoes and mass murder and genocide, and anyone who loves that topic should just Open the Bible at the beginning, start reading Deuteronomy and Exodus, and they'll have a great old time. There's no Arnold Schwarzenegger disaster slaughter film that comes close to what David and Solomon and, whoever else, Indeed. Moses and Aaron, these are the greatest, action heroes you've ever seen in your life, man. Mm-hmm. Well, these boys are out for blood, right? Mm-hmm. This is their God, the God of light, the God of Mason, the God of Albert Pike, the God of every Christian and every Jew. That's why they've done nothing but slaughter each other from time immemorial and getting on everybody else's tits while they're doing it. Mm. They worship a God of disaster. They worship a God of fire and brimstone.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to understand here is it really doesn't matter that you call him God or Satan. It's all one and the same thing. Remember, I was making that allusion that hardcore right-wing Christians have a devil of a time because God love them. They unfortunately are on pretty much quicksand because the God that they worship is a Masonic God.
Yeah. And they're not aware of this, so.
Not aware of it, no. It's a big shocker because they're doing good work, many of them.
That's just complete mind control, isn't it? I mean, on a major level, we're talking on a psychological wavelength,
Very much so. And I'm not being flippant when I say that. I mean, I've had conversations with Tex Mars and Jim Mars and Alex Jones, and this is and others, and they kind of have a vague understanding of this, but they're very loath to really get into it. Because it would ruin everything. It would destroy the very fabric of everything that they believe. That what are you telling us here? That our religion that came from the Jewish came from the Israelites, the Levites, that came from Aton, and we're back. We're all along. We've been standing on the very battlements created by the very God that we're trying to dethrone. This causes lots of problems.
Yeah, I can see that. It's a major issue between the different factions, isn't it?
Yeah. But then, getting back to your question more specifically, and let's take it from a scientific point of view.
Okay.
Let's start just outside any occultism at all. The practical use of the weapon of light. I used to teach this to kids about watching the television and seeing how light was used, driving through the city streets at night and you see that all the buildings are still lit. Your fluorescent flashing marvelous lights in the schoolroom, which is just totally entraining your brain, and all the rest of it, right? The cop who flashes the light in your eyes to weaken your melatonin. Here's a quote from a very important book called, this is actually a different quote. It's from Lawrence Gardner, Genesis of the Grail Kings.
Okay.
A lot of your audience may have already read this book. Here's a quote. It says, "Only in very recent times have medical scientists identified the hormonal secretion of the pineal gland. It was isolated in 1968 and became known as melatonin, which simply means night worker from the Greek melos, black, and tostos, labor. Because people with a high melatonin output react strongly to sunlight, which affects their mental capacity."
See, this is the interesting stuff for me here. This aspect of it is definitely something that we need to look at, a little closer. It's kind of overlooked, isn't it, in the alternative field?
Yeah, it is. Isn't it? Because by virtue of this, they are night operatives, and melatonin is called it's called the hormone of darkness, being produced only at night or in the dark. As you know, one of their beloved symbols is the owl. Bear that in mind. So exposure to an excess of natural light makes the pineal gland smaller, and lessens spiritual awareness,
Yeah.
Whereas darkness and high pineal, remember we're talking about inversions?
Yeah,
What
indeed.
greater inversion? So I have to finish it before we even get into the digressions, right? It says, so exposure to an excess of natural light makes the pineal gland smaller and lessens spiritual awareness. Whereas darkness and high pineal activity enhance the keen intuitive knowledge of the subtle mind, while reducing the stress factor. And melatonin is manufactured by the pineal gland through an activated chemical messenger called serotonin. Melatonin also enhances and boosts the body's immune system, and those with high pineal secretions are less likely to develop cancerous diseases. High melatonin production heightens energy, stamina, and physical tolerance levels, and is directly related to sleep patterns. Now we maybe have a grasp on why these princes of light love their light.
Gosh, this is some deep information you're uncovering here. definitely.
Now we understand why they call themselves Illuminists and why they manipulate, because they're not only just robbing you of your, what he forgot to mention, by the way, is that melatonin and serotonin are the hormone of independence.
Okay, tell me more.
When the cop shines the light in your face, it, as Gardner's pointing out here, the melatonin, imagine melatonin flowing from the pineal is like a river. The moment that bright sunlight is shone on it, or any kind of strong light, that river dries up. And since it's the hormone of independence, that means your independence is lowered. Just like your immune system is lowered, so is your sense of independance.
I see.
Yes, sir, 3 bags full, sir, what can I do for you? And you're shaking like a leaf. They use the light because that will reduce your sense of rebellion and indignancy. And they can then, the famous Humphrey Bogart scenes where they got all the lights on, the guys are grilling the hell out of him, right? Getting the confession and so on.
Right.
That's knowledge. That's knowledge. They're shining the light on you. So in our superlit, fluorescent existence, why people are walking around like zombies can be understood. You don't even need to bring anything to do with occultism into it at all. You're in an occult circle. You're in a city, a cetus, coming from the Latin word meaning the womb.
Really?
Yeah, hall. City hall is phallus. Hall is an abbreviation of phallus.
Right.
City is the female circle, the civic circle, which is why you have circles and towers, circles and clocks, circles and obelisks. They're moving us around on a checkerboard. We don't even have the faintest idea what's going on. These people have us completely under the hex. And they know how light works, and that we also become addicted to it. Because once your natural hormones are shrunk into a state of complete desiccation, you're more likely to then have to rely, like a druggie, right? You're now addicted to the external form of the light, or the external stimulation. Because you have your inner stimulation, your inner imagination, your inner intuition, your right brain, and probably even your damn immune system, let alone your bioenergetics, is running at an all-time low. It's in the minus zone. And then what do? We got TV. We got America's, we got Hollywood.
This information here, Michael, where would you advise people to look for more info on this subject that you're talking about here?
Let's see, there's a book called Catching the Light. If they go to my appendices pages on the Irish Origin site, there is a page there called Light Masonry and something else. It's very easy to find. Just go to Irish Origins, click on appendices, click on this Light and Masonry link, and there's a list of books at the end that will talk about this. Because you see, it's not so much about, anybody can look up anything and just look up a melatonin, research what I've been saying here. Because don't forget that this is like Chinese dolls. You start off studying melatonin and light, and then you end up into perception. You're into the eye. Isn't the eye a Vesica Pisces?
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
Isn't the light that enters the eye phallic?
Yeah, this is very interesting. I actually read that on your site some time back. This concept here was extremely intriguing. I know where you're going with this, Michael, and yeah, it is indeed, yeah.
Right. So, isn't it a parable? Isn't it an exact duplicate of the sexual act?
Indeed, it is, yeah. With the stimulation of the nerves and what have you.
Right. So one wouldn't probably call it orgasmic, but it is. The very fact of light entering the eye and touching the retina at the back makes you feminine and reality masculine. And even though it's such a micro level of stimulus, it is like an orgiastic experience to you on a subconscious level. In the same way that sex act is obviously a much more visceral version of this. So the act of light entering your eye and entering your brain, entering your retina is a sexual act, a pansexual act. This is the kind of knowledge that what I'm sharing with you now is the kind of knowledge that these Masons are fully conversant with. They know, we don't know. Okay, well the Illuminati know all of this. They have this kind of knowledge about the way the human biology works, what perception's about the almost erotic act of looking, seeing. Even the Leonardo da Vinci's, all artists of great caliber know this. The sumptuous capacity to look at something beautiful. And then again, this in ancient days they would have noticed this, that the eye being the shape of the vesica. I just put a link up on my symbolism page on the forum about that age-old image of an eye and a hand. You know, someone holds up a hand and you see the eye in it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible work that this guy's done on that. And then we're into the whole story of the mind and the brain and perception and what is perception and how that when you look at a thing, you've become that thing and you've entered into a relationship with that thing, you see. So there's so many metaphysical dynamics to this. It's just that these are very beautiful philosophical principles. My worry is always about how those wonderful, beautiful things that are meant for the uplift of mankind have been manipulated by those who are using it against us. So the things that I'm talking about, or this stuff about melatonin, this is a perfectly fantastic thing.
Yeah.
We have I've often spoke about how, like, if you take a particular animal like ants or whatever, or any creature, you can train that animal directly, or you can also train it peripherally, meaning that you can change its habitat and it doesn't even know that its behavior is going to have to adjust to changes that you're making outside of its awareness, right?
Yeah.
So we are trained by parents, we're trained by school, we're trained directly by priests and people that are in your face training. And then we have this more subtle hand of manipulation that changes our basic habitat, if you will.
Yeah.
And the use of light is one of the ways that they're doing it. Symbolism is another way that they're doing it. And we adjust to it. So obviously, like I said at the beginning of our program here, in order to combat any of this pestilence, you have to know what the enemy's doing. That means you have to be intelligent. You have to observe what they're doing. You've got to get a handle on know thy enemy and know what weapons he's using, and then you move to the next step of what to do about it. So people who then, understand this will stay away from fluorescent lights. They might change the lighting in their own homes. They may have candlelight. They may spend more time in the half light. They may not need the 15 lights on in their house like most Americans, for instance, are wont to do. Realizing that you're just entraining yourself. You watch less television, perhaps, just based on that principle alone, that you don't want to be besieged by this phosphorescence, because you know what it's doing, you see.
I mean, there's also, I mean, that what you just said there, that's obviously really important when people are aware of these things. But I think another really important side to it is actually changing the way we think towards things. I mean, just a moment ago, about 5 minutes ago, when you mentioned about, the ancients would have recognized the eye as the same shape as the Vesica Pisces, it opens another dimension of thought, of thinking. It's not the constructed, everyday kind of cyclic thinking that these people were using. And I think the more we expand and the more we kind of explore these areas of thought, the easier this is going to become in being immune to the weaponry that's being used against us, and ultimately being free, happy, and to our full potential, exploring, life.
That's right. And you asked me at the beginning, what my talks will be about, what my talks are about. It's about that. And that is, I had this elaborated in the last chapter of the Atlantis book. You're not going to be able to Jackie Can these people out of existence. You can't take them on head to head. They're too smart for that.
Yeah.
The only way to combat universal evil, one of the ways, the most important way, is to become immune to it. Once you are aware of what your enemy is doing, like any, say, chess master, he's a chess master because he's surpassed everybody else. He knows all their stinking rotten strategies. They look pathetic to him. So he's immune to them. He's going to win with his eyes closed. So that's what we need to be doing. And the faster we get on to it, the faster this coterie will be taken down. But you see, until you know the psychology, remember you said a few minutes ago that you were disheartened to see that all these flag-waving mugs were out there?
At the palace, yeah.
Yeah, drooling over the marriage.
Yeah.
The wedding, sir. That's a case in point. The reason why people are still edified by this nonsense is because people need the father figure. People need the king. They may not like the king, or they may have quibbles about the physical queen, but I'm talking psychologically here. They'll accept any queen. Tomorrow, even America could turn around and say, hey, we should have an oligarch. They're halfway there already, or more than that, halfway there already. So tomorrow, you never know what might happen. And the point is, as Michel Foucault and so many other people have brought up, is that people want to be told what to do. A couple of minutes ago in history, we had kings, and kings told you what to do. Yeah. You didn't need to take personal responsibility. You just needed to follow orders. And if you serve the king well, or the baron, or the earl, you will get reward. He'll tell you who you can marry. He'll give you some land. He'll make you a knight. He'll dub you a knight. He'll give you some armor. He'll give you some money. And everything in your life is laid on by obedience to the king. The Christian is doing the same thing by his obedience to his God. We want God. We want it. We want global village. We want the master. It's good. And by the way, as a matter of fact, I don't even mean that I am speaking flippantly, but also I mean it quite strictly. The global village, Matthew, will be good. It will be a crime-free world. It will be Minority Report. It will be crime-free. It will provide everything that is needed for a man, just in the same way that in that speech in the movie Network, where he says all distress, all traumas will be satiated, all needs will be met. This scientific dictatorship, this global village that they're building, will in fact, from a physical point of view, from a material, physical, sensational point of view, be an absolute wet dream for people, because all of these things will be laid on, everything will be automated, and so forth and so on. And I can't kick that, because even a lot of the science and technology that they're going to bring and are creating is actually very good. The lame will walk, the blind will see, the paraplegic person will be able to function, and so on. So I'm not against the technique, I'm not against even the science, I'm only against the ideology behind it. But the point that I'm trying to make is that absence of the king, which again, historically speaking, is an extremely short time ago, has left us in almost an infantile state. Not everybody, obviously, but the vast majority of people really want that kind of archetype. So when they wheel it out in this more, conventional, contemporary way, that's why people just drool all over themselves. Have you not noticed, for instance, that many of the so-called celebrities of today, I mean, these are just punks who became celebrities, are driving around in Bentleys wearing huge gold rings and think of themselves as princes? They even mimic a lot of what royalty does in their acts or even in their costumes and what have you. So, and their ostentatiousness. Many of the world celebrities today who sort of the Mick Jagger syndrome I'm speaking of here, in which these people who start off as nothing, actually, in many ways, if you watch the symbolism of what they're doing, they're almost so egomaniacal, but they're also parodying or they want to simulate royalty.
And also, there's many aspects of masonry within the music culture and the Hollywood scene as well, isn't there?
Of course, yeah. They're through and through. I mean, they really do have a huge amount of control over the media, which means from advertising all the way down to the top 40 and what have you. Psychedelics.
And with regards to these archetypes that a lot of the public or the population are relying on in a psychological sense, is this? I mean, I've heard you speak about Jung's work, Carl Jung's work. Is this the same kind of exoteric version of those archetypes? Are they presenting them at specific astrological times that there will be a craving for this kind of archetype? Are you with me?
Yeah, that's a perfectly valid way of looking at it. If you move from, say, just the Freudian idea of just the parents, absolutely, man has embedded within him the father archetype and the mother archetype as well. That's why we said one anecdote we gave that fits is the coming of the people to America to seek freedom, Mother America to be embraced by the arms of the goddess, and so they put a goddess there coming over the ocean. Yeah, we have to leave our country, and that's a death. And we're looking for new life, which is birth. And then even the ship pulls in at the birth, it docks at the birth, like George Maxwell has said. Look at all the maritime symbolism is entirely based on birthing, mother giving birth to a child symbolism. America is born, the symbolism around America's chart, for instance, is again the Cancer. It's born under the sign of Cancer, which is the mother, the symbol of the mother.
Okay.
Cancer, anybody who has a Cancer knows that it's a water sign and it's a mother sign. So you have that aspect as well. And so these archetypes of the collective unconscious, as Jung would speak of, and believe me, he wasn't the first to discover these. Previous people had speculated that this kind of a pre-conscious patterning existed. They were often called primordial images by previous sociologists and so on. And one could just call them encodations. They're just ideas that have an enormous amount of power. And that's an incredible subject when you actually get into it, about these archetypes. I've touched, as you say, I have touched on it. When I brought up Jung, I heavily brought up his shadow archetype.
Okay, yeah.
in my talks because I'm very much fascinated by that, and I think that's a key part of this unfolding. My talk, hopefully at your convention, will also maybe be able to get into that a bit, also about the shadow work and what that implies and what the shadow really is, and what that implies and how it comes about and so on.
Yeah.
Very, very important key part of this working through to become immune, you see.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing is, of late, maybe say the last 10, 15 years, you will have noticed how many sort of morbid type programs have been turning up. Programs on forensics, programs on, corpses and death, and even the films getting much more violent.
Yeah.
A lot more emphasis on serial killers and Satanists and evil, Hannibal Lecter type, kind of really dark, sick sort of films, right?
The age ratings are coming down as well, aren't they? Films that would be 18 a few years back are now 12,
Yes, exactly. So this falls under this heading. This falls under this necrophiliac shadow projection kind of thing, because the Illuminati, just like we said earlier about them giving us external forms of light and stimulation, because they know that we become completely archetypally raped within.
Yeah.
So they also know that we have the devil within us. We have wish fulfillment. We have the little bit of the rebel without a cause. We want to act out. And since we're not able to actually go and do that to most intents and purposes, so then they bring on the movies again with all of this violence and blood and guts and rebellion and superhero-ship, because we then vicariously can be that person, sort of the die-hard mentality. We vicariously get our kicks through those means.
I mean, we're really dealing with sick characters on the other side here, aren't we?
Yes, we are. These are definitely sorcerers. There are people who are possessed, although I don't mean that in strictly the Christian way, because there's other ways of being possessed than probably people know. Possession usually gives a idea of some sort of external, bizarre, again, negative power entering into you, and I don't doubt that that is quite the case. But there's other versions as well. I kind of want to hold off on that because I want to get more deeply into it in the actual talk as well.
Okay.
But to answer your question, absolutely. We are in this state right now because we are living in the forensic filth of the most toxic and self-murdered people that you could possibly imagine. That's one of the reasons why the collectivity is so key to them, why they're so much into the hive mentality, because they themselves individually, I mean, these Blairs, these Thatchers, and these Gorbachevs and Obamas and all, these people as individuals don't exist. I mean, they've given themselves over entirely to the collective and to their fraternities and to the system. They're just absolute automatons, products of the system. And that's why they rely on that system so much and want to turn the rest of us into that. They're very threatened. That's why the use of light on our melatonin, for instance, is done, because they don't like individuals. They have a tremendous hatred. I mean, an absolute pathological hatred for individuals, for independence. They loathe these things. At the most, they'll use them as talismanic words when it suits them. But ultimately, they despise it. They're absolute dyed-in-the-flesh collectivists in exactly the Ayn Rand way, in the way that philosopher spoke. And these people are of the crowd. And they know that the crowd can be controlled through light, through fear, through anxiety, and so on. For instance, if you're in a train wreck, and most of the people are just like crawling around, having the faintest idea what to be doing, in any situation where there's a crowd, and any kind of time when there's trauma, everyone will look to a potential leader.
Yeah.
Either conductor or some other passenger who happens to know about things and or got a little bit more guts than the average person, and he leads them all to, there's umpteen examples of this.
Yeah.
And so, everyone, and they've even seen this in just outdoor crowds. Any time when there's some sort of trauma, everyone normally just gets around the alpha person who stands up and sort of just, even without wanting to do so, ends up being the leader, the smart guy or whatever, or the more brave person, right? So what do we learn from this? We learn that collectivity, a certain amount of collectivity, is inevitable. Collectivity with a small c. How do we have tobacco? How do we have bananas and oranges?
Yeah.
Collectivity. Everyone helping each other. So when I talk against collectivity, I'm not speaking about the interactions between people, the associations, the socialization, the acculturation, or the mercurial ebb and flow. That's not what I'm talking about at all. The collectivity that I have a problem with is the collectivity that becomes the means to annihilate the self. The person's giving himself over to the collective to such an extent that he is completely, abandons his own sovereignty and he abandons his own selfhood, and that's what's happening more and more and more along the line. And the trouble is that the more that it continues to happen, the less and less the Illuminati have to do. Because if the slave is doing his master's work for him, meaning if you are putting the shackles on yourself, if you're swimming into the jaws of the Leviathan of your own power, listen, you're doing Big Brother's work for him. He doesn't even have to move a muscle. So what I'm seeing today, you alluded to it about these gormless masses out there waving their flags. As well as there's an awakening taking place, there's also a greater need for the master, a greater avoidance of doing the shadow work, a greater immersion in the collective, a greater mind controlling coming through the media and so on. And so we are actually slowly incarcerating ourselves. It's Big Brother's wet dream. We're doing their work for them. And this is what has to be halted. This is what has to be sort of prevented and stopped,
Definitely. I mean, that's why we're doing the work we're doing to get this information out there. I mean, what is encouraging is that, friends of mine have said that they've passed on the link and whatnot. And, you get kind of messages back from people saying, I introduced my cousin, for instance, to your website, and that they're really into it now. They're really digging up information on this. And it's a good feeling to know that people are listening and passing this information on. Hopefully we can get the kind of giant domino effect going on, eh?
I think so. And one of the other things that happened, a friend of mine told me that, again, a person that he knew in his family is absolutely stunned everybody because he is now open to a lot of this stuff. And they just can't believe it. And the reason is, one of the reasons is because a lot of people who are open-minded and decent and good people are hearing so much utter crap from people that they know that they're not getting into alternative matters because it's their first love. It's just that people are getting sick of the total illogical, irrational, and completely meaningless garbage that they're hearing every day, not just from the media, but from other people.
Yeah.
So the intelligent man is just going, that's a load of crap what you just said. I know that's not true. Say it's something about the war, Second World War, First World War, or the recent Gulf War, or the economic meltdown.
Or Osama bin Laden, eh?
Yes, exactly. On a daily basis, people are just going, I may not know what the truth is, but I certainly know that what you just told me is total and utter rubbish. Well, actually, that person has moved on further than they probably realize. That person is now ready to really get interested in something a lot more. As I said, we are definitely in the age of answers. I really do believe that.
Fantastic. I think that's a great way to wrap the show up as well, Michael. We've covered some ground here, and it's been absolutely fantastic to have a chance to speak with you before the conference as well. I've been really intrigued tonight, so thanks, mate.
Oh, you're most welcome. I'd be glad to meet you and participate in your event. Again, I hold you in the highest esteem. That's why I said yes to coming to your conference, because I can't tell you the list of things I have to turn down, so it's always good to work with somebody who's up to speed, first of all, on these principles, who's doing the thinking, and then is, inspired and courageous enough to take it out to the rest of the world and provide that platform for people like myself. So I'm looking forward to it.
Definitely, me too. Okay, for those that don't know, the conference we're speaking about is the Big Awakening. It's down at the Middleton Arena, Manchester, and you can catch the details online. You can get tickets on our website, icanplanet.com. Also, check out Michael's website. There's lots of information on there. There's a big section of appendices also, isn't there, Michael, that you've published, so people can just kind of read through them without having to... I encourage people to buy the book, most definitely, but people can browse the site and get a little bit deeper into your area, your different areas of research if they want. That's MajklTsarion.com, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and that's the navigation page. I have about 14 websites, and the 3 websites, Atlantis, Irish Origins, and Astrotheology, have very large appendices sections. Normally appendices are put into books, but the books were already so voluminous, I decided to put them onto the websites, and then also they can be added to ad infinitum, and so there's absolutely critical information on those appendices pages. So people are free to go there and check it out. Also in my forum, there's all up-to-date stuff, lots of up-to-date material that's sent to me from all over the world that we put up in the forum.
Well, it's been absolutely fantastic speaking with you, as I say, Michael, and look forward to seeing you on the 18th at the Middleton Arena, mate. Okay,
thanks again.
You take care. All the best, mate.